Buenas noches, mi nombre es Sasha Hanik de Disidentes.org. Hace 31 años el gobierno chino persiguió y aplastó a los estudiantes de Tiananmen, pero también todas las esperanzas democráticas de ese país. Ahí también acabaron las reformas del sistema, que quedó a medio camino entre un totalitarismo y una economía abierta. Hoy fueron esas mismas tendencias autoritarias las que empujaron la censura, que finalmente expandió el COVID-19 alrededor del mundo. Hoy hablaremos con dos sobrevivientes de Tiananmen, que dedican sus vidas para denunciar la corrupción y las mentiras del gobierno de Beijing. Este evento es parte de un proyecto llamado Disidentes de la Fundación para el Progreso, en colaboración con Human Rights Foundation y China Uncensored, en esta ocasión transmitido también por El Libero. Jung Jin Lee es tanto un sobreviviente de la revolución cultural como de la masacre de Tiananmen. A veces es llamado el arquitecto de la democracia en China. Estuvo en la cárcel entre 2002 y 2007, confinado por casi 2 años en aislamiento solitario. El doctor Jianli hablará con Chris Chappell. Chris es host de China Uncensored, programa de YouTube dedicado a descubrir las mentiras del régimen de Beijing. Muchas gracias a ambos por estar acá con nosotros.
Hi, I'm Chris Chappell, the host of China Uncensored. 31 years ago, the Tiananmen Square massacre made it very clear what kind of government China had. The Chinese Communist Party massacred thousands of students whose only crime was asking for freedom. For those that survived, the nightmare was only beginning. They had to pretend like nothing ever happened, or face a lifetime of persecution and exile. And so today, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has managed to erase the Tiananmen Square massacre from the history books, at least inside mainland China. But why should the rest of the world care what happens in China? We all have our own problems. Well, the CCP's cover-ups and lies do affect us. One way is the coronavirus. Instead of dealing with the outbreak early, the CCP tried to cover it up, and that helped it spread around the world. Joining me today is Tiananmen survivor Jung Jin Lee. He now lives in exile as a human rights activist. He created the Foundation for China in the 21st Century to talk about what China can become after the Chinese Communist Party falls. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Chris.
So, do you see any parallels between how the Chinese Communist Party covered up the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989 and how they covered up the coronavirus outbreak in 2020?
Yes, I have been telling the world, the regime that is ruling China, the CCP regime, is the same regime that's massacred thousands of students 31 years ago in Tiananmen Square. The nature of this regime has not changed, although China has undergone tremendous change, especially economically. And today, the public health crisis, the coronavirus outbreak, once again exposed the nature of this regime. So we understand that once again, this regime put power and control over human lives. They consider the solidarity, the stability of its power more important than anything else. So that's why. I'm sorry.
So do you think the Communist Party is responsible for the coronavirus outbreak?
Yes, of course. And according to the information and evidence we have collected, actually it's everywhere. If you want to make a little effort into it, you will see Chinese government, the CCP, is almost fully responsible for the initially controllable virus outbreak to become a global pandemic. And when the virus outbreak first happened in China, and the first reaction of the regime is cover up because they think this crisis can make the whole society unstable. And the regime always want to look good. So they cover up and suppress the free speech and crack down on whistleblowers. And at least some expert estimate at least the delayed 3 weeks or even longer to react to the virus outbreak. That actually helped the virus to spread to the entire world.
Well, many are saying that China's response to the coronavirus, although authoritarian, was effective. What do you have to say to that?
Say it again.
There are people who say that how the Chinese Communist Party responded to the coronavirus outbreak, it was authoritarian, but it was effective. It stopped the spread of the virus. What do you have to say about that?
There are a lot of sayings about that, but we cannot forget the fact. It is the CCP that who covered up the truth, covered up the situation, and played down the extent of the casualty in China, so that other countries did not pay close attention to what's going on. And that actually helped the outbreak become a global catastrophe. And even in China, now we see the virus outbreak has been put under control, seemingly. But still, people skeptical about the information provided by the Chinese government. We have no much information whatsoever, whether there's still more cases coming up every day and how many actually died. We still have no exact number about it. And because the authoritarian power can put the measures into the whole society with very restricted tools and measures. Of course, to a certain degree, it will control the spread of the virus. But at the same time, the sufferings of people, because of the government's heavy-handed restriction on the movement and everything else, especially free speech, how much people have suffered. And the outer world has no idea about it. And we all know the whistleblower Li Wenliang's story. His death actually unleashed the people's anger against the government and caused the people to demand for free speech with a very strong voice, is unprecedentedly strong. And the government, instead of learning lessons and changing behavior, it doubled down ever since the death of Li Wenliang on clamping down on their free expression and free speech. And many dissidents and citizen journalists have ever since wound up and disappeared. So this fact should not be overlooked.
Well, so whether we're talking about the Tiananmen Square massacre or the coronavirus, it seems the Chinese Communist Party has a fondness for cover-ups. What is it about the communist system there that encourages these kind of cover-ups?
Yeah. As I said earlier, they put power and control over human lives. When anything happens, anything serious happens, their authorities know better than anybody else. Probably this incident or disaster caused by the government's action, either by negligence or by corrupt behavior. So the first reaction is always to cover up, not let people to know what's going on. Any truth can trigger people's demand for more open up, for transparency, and can set off the social unrest. So this is their mindset. It's always cover up, because to continue its rule, to support its rule, they not only use violence but always use lies. if people know the truth, the regime cannot sustain. So they understand that better than anybody else.
I think it's really interesting to compare China and Taiwan's response to the coronavirus. Taiwan, it's another country of Chinese people, but it's a democracy. It handled the coronavirus in a very open, transparent way. And it seems, based on the number of deaths and cases of the coronavirus, Taiwan is handled better than any other country. So what is the difference between these two countries of Chinese people?
Yes, it is inevitable from day one. There are going to be a contest between democracy and autocracy in handling this crisis and comparing two systems. And China, of course, is the first who affected by this virus outbreak. And Taiwan is very close to China. People would think, Taiwan would be affected, will be hit hard. But it turns out to be just the opposite. People keep asking why. First of all, Taiwan is probably the country who knows China better than any other country, who does not trust what the CCP says, anything, because they has had, tremendous experience dealing with this regime. So they don't trust the information provided by the Chinese government. And just a couple of months earlier, when Tsai Ing-wen was re-elected, China cut off the tourists. So that actually cut the people from China travel to Taiwan. But at the same time, when Wuhan was locked down, but many residents of Wuhan just traveled to the rest of the world, not Taiwan. And additionally, Taiwan is very responsive, government is really responsive to the people, very transparent, and these all contribute to their achievement in containing this virus outbreak. Very ironically, Taiwan is not the member of WHO, the World Health Organization, which is supposed to coordinate the international effort to defend the people's life against the disaster like this. But it turns out to be the country that is not the member of WHO fares the best. It says a lot. It says a lot. So I always
part of the World Health Organization.
Yeah, says a lot about WHO. When people ask me a question about Taiwan and WHO, I always say, imagine a mountain village frequently attacked by wild animals, hired a defender to engage in collective defense of the village. And one despot in the village is bullying a villager who does not like and exclude him from the collective defense system. And the defenders, the hired defender, submit to their evil power of despot, just totally exclude this villager out of the system. But one day a wolf attacked. It turns out to be that the villager, excluded the villager, fares the best, suffered the least casualty. But all others suffered much, much more casualty. What does that say about the defender and the despot? So I always want to tell people what's going on with this example.
Well, so China has been very effective at getting the World Health Organization to exclude Taiwan. It also seems that the World Health Organization has actually been praising China's response to the coronavirus since day one. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And we look into the background of Tedros. the Director General of WHO, we found he was on the top leadership for many years of authoritarian regime, one of the worst human rights violators in the world. And during his term as Minister of Health of Ethiopia, he actually covered up for one virus. I don't remember the virus name. So the people of Ethiopia has made it public when he was running for the Director General of WHO. And I think he had a track record to show that what kind of person he is. And his record shows he likes the dictators and is supported by dictators. He's supported for his candidacy by the Central American dictators and by dictators from China and other world dictators. He got elected with a larger vote. And just a few months after he assumed the post as the Director General, he appointed Robert Mugabe, the notorious dictator, as a goodwill ambassador of WHO. And only with the pressure did he rescind that appointment. So I have a lot of examples. This example shows Tedros, the Director General of WHO, likes dictators, favors dictators, and also is a favorite of dictators. In handling this current virus outbreak, he obviously helped China to cover up. When China covered up and cracked down on the whistleblowers, he said openly, multiple times, that China committed to transparency. Nothing is further from truth. And, he delayed, according to China's will, to declare this is a global pandemic and things like that. We have a lot of examples. Just not 2 weeks ago, my friend Aaron wrote and myself wrote an article, the key questions for WHO. So we come up with 17 questions directly related to this to WHO's handling of this virus outbreak. And I think if WHO is to remain credible, it must answer these questions publicly and in detail.
The Chinese Communist Party has also been spreading a message that the coronavirus didn't actually begin in China. It actually was started by the US military. Are these kind of propaganda tactics common?
It's very common. And after the first stage, China seemed to gradually put the virus under control. And at the same time, the virus spread to the rest of the world, plunged various countries into total catastrophe with serious economic consequences. And China found opportunity to engage in disinformation campaign so that to rebuild its public image and also take the opportunity to play as a leader in global governance, if you will. So the first thing they did at the end of February was to send out, the information, the rumors about the origin of this virus. The origin of the virus was once no question. Nobody actually questioned the origin of the virus in the first 2 months. That was in Wuhan, right? That is Wuhan. Nobody until the end of February, when the top expert of China in containing the virus said publicly, oh, the origin of the virus may not be in China, not mainly from China. Then after that, we call it wolf-style diplomats of China, use the social media that is forbidden in China to spread out this rumor about the origin of the virus. First, they blame the U.S. military to bring the virus to China. Then Italy, just a couple of days ago, the People's Daily, the party's mouthpiece, featured an article saying that an expert in France just reported, the virus actually developed from some other virus from France. So all of a sudden, the origin of the virus now is in France. So probably next time it would be UK. And so they try to muddy the water, if you will, so that they can disturb the international effort to come together to hold China accountable. So this kind of disinformation campaign does not work in the international community, but we must notice that it works to a certain degree in China. A lot of Chinese people actually believe what the Chinese government has told them about the origin of the virus. So this is very sad.
Do you think it will be a situation like the Tiananmen Square massacre, where people inside China in a few years have no idea the truth about the coronavirus, that the Communist Party successfully covers it up?
Despite the government's best effort, this time I don't think it will be so successful as it did in the aftermath of the Tiananmen massacre. The reason being, with the internet, although China has a severe censorship on the information on internet, people still find a variety of ways to get around the firewall to get information from the outside world. And this time, even the people within the party, even on the top leadership, have been, have different views than what Xi Jinping has. And also, some kind of undercurrent has been going on, trying to form an opposition against the China's leader, dictator, Xi Jinping. And of course, Xi Jinping has been trying to control with heavy-handed measure. On the one hand, continue to purge the potential enemies. Just in the few past weeks, couple of top senior officials has been purged. And on the other hand, continue and intensify the international action. It's more aggressively in South China Sea and other area, trying to prepare or create a military clash or some kind of clash with outside world to deflect the criticism and the pressure from internal politics. So Xi Jinping is trying to do something, but other people at the same time try to form opposition against him with the information, everything. What I would say, despite the best effort of Xi Jinping, this time I don't think the regime will be so successful.
Your conference was allegedly hacked at COVIDCon in April. Tell us what happened.
I gave a keynote speech at the COVIDCon that was held April 13th. Yeah. And after my presentation, there was QA session. And I answered the 3 questions. When I tried to answer the 4th question, the screen, my computer just went black. And I tried to reboot it and try to turn it on multiple times, but I failed to do it. And then I call my technical team to help me, and I tried to reboot it to rejoin the conference. But we tried for a couple of hours. We didn't get turned on. And later, the organizer of the conference called me, asked me what's going on. And everybody thought that was attacker from CCP. And because this conference had been sending out a notice to let people to join. So by that time, the authorities in China must have been aware of the conference. They know the purpose of the conference. They knew that I would speak. So very likely that was an attack from China.
Is this something you have to face a lot?
Yes, of course. And we constantly face these kind of attacks, especially when the so-called sensitive dates, when we put together event commemorating Tiananmen Square massacre, for example, we would receive attacks one kind or another.
Do you think with the coronavirus, do you think this will change how the world views China?
Yes, I think the international relations, China's international relations, will undergo tremendous change. And as we said earlier, this public health crisis exposed the nature once again of the CCP regime, even to a larger degree. And now one consensus has gradually built up in the international community. That is, we must come together to hold the CCP to account for its mistake, if not intentionally to harm the rest of the world, for covering up the outbreak, so that the entire world has been plunged in such a crisis with hundreds of thousands of lives lost. And that's the consensus I think will be built up. Another consensus is also in the process of building up, but we don't know which direction it will take. That is, many countries now realize that too much relying on China's supply chain will have serious problem when such a thing happens. So I think in the future, international trade, in the future globalization, this will be a very, very important question everybody will consider and will not ignore. And as a result, so the relationship of the rest of the world with China would be no longer the same as it used to be before the onset of the virus.
Well, certainly a big problem in the coronavirus outbreak has been that China manufactures most of the world's medical supplies. Other than moving these kind of critical supply chains out of China, what are some ways the international community would be able to hold China accountable?
This is a very difficult question. Some individuals have already filed a lawsuit in court asking China to pay. But there are a lot of obstacles in in the law, either here or any international law anywhere. And it's not an easy job. I think it's up to the world leaders, the leaders of the world democracies and their parliaments to find a way to bring all the democracy together to confront China on this question, how we will hold China accountable. And more important questions, when doing this, how the invasion that is an opportunity for them to help China to change. And this pressure should be applied on Xi Jinping and its regime, not on the people of China. If China pay, I think ultimately that is the burden would be on the people of China. So this pressure, I think, should be applied on the regime in a way that can press the regime to change, to press the leadership to crack open, so that the people and the officials inside the party who want to move forward to combine a viable opposition to move China forward. So we must have that vision in doing this. And I still cannot see that movement in the international community. So we will continue to advocate for that.
Some have called the coronavirus the Chinese Communist Party's Chernobyl. Do you think that's accurate?
Yes, I think the chance to change China is definitely higher than, for example, it was at the end of last year. And because of this crisis, everything is changing. And I think we stand a high chance, but we still have to look at the 4 factors. The first factor, how long the people's anger against the regime can last, how general, how universal that is. My personal belief is it will last, but we may not see it on the surface because of the suppression. And there has been general robust discontent with the government already. So this just added up. And the second factor is whether we can translate that people's sentiment, demanding for change, anger against the current regime, into a viable democratic opposition. The third factor is whether the people, the officials in the top leadership can crack open for many reasons. One, Xi Jinping has been building up his notorious personality cult. For his only political gain, he removed the term limit, trying to make himself a president for life. And the failure in the foreign policy with US and other countries, trade war with US, the failure in Hong Kong, Taiwan, so you name it. So for these policy failures, some people inside the party may want to crack open. So that's the third factor we have to look at. And the fourth factor is international factor. We just talked about how the democracy can come together to confront China, to press the regime to open up, to crack open, to help China to change. And at the same time, when people try to build a new globalization, we have to put that into consideration. Should we have the globalization that we had before the onset of outbreak? I don't think globalization in the future would be the same. But what would be different? What would be different? So to me, I think the major powers, the major economies must have a consistent value system. And not only market economy, but in politics. It won't work. The globalization as we had before won't work if we have major powers, democracy, market economy, human rights, but one major power is closed society, unfair trade, violating human rights, and all these things happening. I don't think that can coexist for a long time in such globalization. We have to put this question into consideration about what kind of a globalization we will have. When all these factors work together, of course, China must have a Chernobyl moment because of this virus outbreak, or not because of this virus outbreak. And crisis will happen anyway. I predicted a long time ago when I look at these four factors. I said once at a hearing in the European Subcommittee of Human Rights, the only thing needed probably just a crisis. The crisis will bring the four factors together. So it is happening.
Well, thank you very much for joining me and talking about all of this.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Fengsuo Zhou fue presidente de la Federación de Estudiantes de la Universidad de Tsinghua en la masacre de Tiananmen. Tras este evento quedó en quinto lugar entre las personas más buscadas en China. Hoy vive en los Estados Unidos y trabaja sobre todo develando la corrupción del régimen. Zhou hablará con Rafael Rincón, cofundador del proyecto Disidentes y consultor en FPP Chile. Muchas gracias a ambos por su tiempo.
Bienvenidos a esta conversación. Las naciones, organizaciones, gobiernos y científicos de todo el mundo están luchando para contener y derrotar la pandemia del coronavirus. Y es cierto que hay una necesidad urgente de esfuerzos y soluciones coordinados. Trabajar juntos a escala global nunca ha sido tan necesario, al menos en los últimos años. Pero la falta de confianza es un gran obstáculo hoy. China e incluso la OMS están en el ojo de una tormenta política global. El presidente Donald Trump retiró el financiamiento estadounidense acusando a la OMS de favorecer a China. Y todos sabemos que China ha sido acusada de ocultar la situación, encubrir la gravedad del problema y de ser demasiado lenta para compartir información, especialmente en los días y semanas posteriores a la aparición del virus. Beijing, por supuesto, está más que tratando de contrarrestar estas acusaciones y ahora se ha puesto a la ofensiva para controlar la narrativa mundial del coronavirus. ¿Es esto solo un intercambio de acusaciones o una guerra de teorías conspirativas? ¿Es más que eso? Hablaremos hoy con un hombre, un disidente que conoce muy bien su país y el régimen chino. Gracias, Fengsuo Zhou, por acompañarnos hoy.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's my pleasure.
Señor Zhou, usted vive en los Estados Unidos. Primero, cuéntenos cómo es la situación en el país y en su ciudad.
Yeah, I live in Newark, New Jersey, about 15 miles from Manhattan. So we are literally at the epicenter of the pandemic here in the United States. The situation has been really serious here. More than 10,000 people died in New York City, and I think almost like that in New Jersey. And here, a few blocks away from me, was declared as like a serious area for infection. So we are definitely in the midst of it. Fortunately, the peak passed, so we are on the way to heal and recover now.
Como miembro de la comunidad china, ¿siente usted, señor Zhou, algún tipo de rechazo, de confianza en los Estados Unidos debido a la pandemia?
Yeah, for me personally, I haven't encountered any problems, but I do see incidents, reports of problems, and I am kind of more aware of my identity when I go out, which happen rarely. So, in a sense, what we are trying to do here, we are also trying to help the local community, because we have access to urgently needed medical masks. We have been providing medical masks, N95, to over 20 hospitals here. So I've been to all these hospitals myself. Just to be there, with these people who are fighting at the front line against this pandemic, you feel this connection. We are in this together against an invisible enemy.
Bien, perfecto. Hace un par de semanas, usted escribió que Bill Gates está en lo correcto al elogiar a Taiwán y decir que es el país modelo para el mundo en la lucha contra la pandemia, y que muchas vidas se habrían salvado si sus voces hubiesen sido escuchadas a nivel mundial, en lugar de haber sido bloqueadas por la OMS. ¿Cree que hay un responsable de la pandemia, un único responsable que es correcto señalar a alguien, o hay muchos gobiernos, organizaciones y personas involucradas?
Of course, it's the communist China, the CCP, that's responsible for this pandemic. And after CCP, I think the World Health Organization played a big role in being accomplice, aiding them in this cover-up that basically made it possible for the virus to develop the infection and became a global problem. I was in Taiwan in January for the election, which was one of the most exciting events of this year. A few positive things there. And we were talking about this Wuhan virus at that time. And Taiwan was on high alert even during the celebration. So it's amazing what this country has done as a democracy. Everything is normal. Schools are open, business is still going, and only about 400 are infected. Most of these cases are imported, and about 28 people died. It's nothing short of a miracle. Think about the distance from Wuhan, from China. It's so close. And why? There's a lot of reasons. I think that the most important reason is that they are alert of the treachery of the communist government. So they knew there are things going wrong at the end of last year when Dr. Li Wenliang, who first disclosed the message that there are problems of person-to-person infection. This is similar to SARS. So that's the first mention of this infection in Wuhan. And only Taiwan took it seriously, and the related message to WHO, but WHO ignored it, and I think it's still on their tweet, on WHO's Twitter. You can still see it on January 14. They are still saying this infection. There's no evidence of person-to-person infection. That's why the whole world was not really alert enough. But in Taiwan, they are, because they know this government under communist China would cover up everything. So from the beginning, they were trying to screen people. They didn't, for example, stop the flow of people from China. Even I met people from China in January in Taiwan, but they were doing very aggressive screening. At the same time, they are keeping people's freedom, property rights, everything just normal. It's amazing what they have done. What they could achieve. If every country could follow Taiwan's example, it would be a different world today. But unfortunately, their voice was not heard globally. So I think for this, it's a testimony to the effectiveness of Chinese democracy. I mean, a democracy of Chinese-speaking language. And that is very alert to the cover-up of this regime in Beijing. So I think that has a huge implication for the future too. And another amazing thing, I think this is, to me, is a surprise. They are self-sufficient in many ways. So in the beginning, they were trying to keep the medical supply of masks. So they wouldn't export masks. For a while, they were criticized for it because there was no sign of infection in Taiwan. But later, their prudence was proven. And now, because they have such a production capacity that meet all the demands, they are exporting masks to all over the world to help. Yeah, that's just in contrast to China, what's happening. And Dr. Li Wenliang, who first leaked the person-to-person infection, and he was censored. Later, he died. He died in February 6th. Before he died, I think he did something heroic. He said, this country, if it wants to be a healthy society, it needs diverse voice. You just cannot have one voice. There's no truth behind it. I mean, that's basically what he said before he died. That's the most important lesson we can learn from this. And I think this was also mentioned by this great author, Maria Loza from Peru. And he wrote a great article about this, why the CCP's China is responsible because of the repression of free speech. That's the cause of the problem. And the whole world now becomes victim simply because the whole world has been embracing such a regime and ignoring its dark side, its abuse of human rights and all that, believing it's a Chinese only problem. It hurts only people in China. But this shows it's a global problem, and we cannot be blind to this, to what they are committing, the crimes against Chinese people in China.
El secretario de Estado de los Estados Unidos, Mike Pompeo, dijo recientemente que existe una enorme evidencia de que la pandemia del coronavirus se originó en un laboratorio chino, en Wuhan. ¿Cree que esto puede ser cierto o que es solamente una teoría conspirativa?
I think it might be true, but for now it's really probably impossible to prove, given that they have done a lot of bleaching of that lab, even the market, that so the live stocks there. I think they have done a lot. Probably the destruction of evidence probably has been going on for a while. So it's probably very difficult. But on the other hand, this government has a burden of proof. They need to prove that it's not, for example, a leak from a lab, and the lab, which is only P4 lab, was miles from the center of the breakout. You just cannot exclude this strong probability that first it was possible that it's a human engineering project that went wrong somehow. And second, it's probably something that leaked from the lab. I mean, these two could coexist, or one of it may be true. We don't really know for now. But there are very strong circumstantial evidence. For example, even a Chinese research recently, he was banned from talking about this because he believes there's definitely some work. You can trace this to the work from this lab, but he was forbidden from talking about it in China. And everyone who reads other possibility in China will be deemed enemy of the state, of course, in the league of Secretary Pompeo. But, so that's the situation now. And last year, as I was testifying at US Congress on Tiananmen 30 year and what we could learn, I basically said, this China now, with all its control of information and its unlimited investments in technology, this kind of, for example, bioengineering, that's not possible in other countries. But they could have very strong state support to do whatever crazy things they could. And I basically said, this is a risk, a danger to the whole world. For example, they had the first case of genetically engineered babies in China. And they were doctoring a monkey's brain with human gene, for example. All these things that under a normal work, you should have transparency, check, and balance. In China, it could go. Even I think just about the time earlier this year, a German scientist wanted to move his lab to Shanghai, believing that China is the best country for biological research. Think about it. A regime that has no moral, legal control, and with just unlimited capacity for scientists who have crazy ideas. That's kind of combination that will sure endanger humanity.
Señor Zhou, cuéntenos cómo es la situación de los disidentes en China. Los ojos del mundo están hoy puestos en Beijing. ¿Cree que de alguna manera esto los protegería a ellos, a los disidentes chinos?
No, it's actually becoming much worse. Just this past week, they arrested 3 people. I think their name, Wang Caiwei, Chen Mei, and Cai Wei's girlfriend, Xiao Tang. So they were arrested simply for collecting the censored information and keep a record. So they were trying to just keep the memory of the virus, the pandemic, alive, because Chinese internet delete everything. Whenever something is informative, they will delete it. For example, we don't even know how many people died. Who died? There's no record, no accountability. And so now they are so afraid of this, even people who collect such information. And they were arrested for now about 20 days almost. And the problem is, even the police wouldn't acknowledge it. The families and lawyers couldn't find out where they are. And there's no agency, no government official responsible for it. These people just disappeared. That's what's happening to people who are willing to seek truth in China. And they were not activists before, but there were many activists who were arrested during this pandemic, and basically because we all have this problem now. The outside world just didn't know. For example, Xu Zhiyong, who was a doctor of law, and he was one of the most famous activists in China. He was arrested in January because he wrote a letter calling for the resignation of Xi Jinping And there's another dissident, Guo Quan, in Nanjing, and he was arrested again after serving 10 years. He was released just recent years. Now he has disappeared. Just many, and also a few activists, Chen Qiushi, Fang Bin, who were visiting Wuhan, just trying to know the fact. Yeah, they are all gone now. Nobody knows where they are. And in particular, I think the Chinese government sees this disaster as an opportunity to build their control over Chinese people. They see any criticism as a conspiracy against Chinese people. And now, for example, even this author, Fang Fang, who was in Wuhan, just writing about it, and her diary just published in many languages. Basically, it's a diary in Wuhan, so it's a journal of what she experienced and her observation. And now she is labeled as a traitor. And in fact, she is actually under government payroll. She's just the author who is outspoken. So, and so the situation for the dissidents in China is definitely getting worse now.
Usted, señor Zhou, es una de las voces más respetadas de Tiananmen, y Tiananmen tuvo un enorme impacto en el mundo. ¿Cree que esta situación de alguna manera es una especie de segundo Tiananmen? Le hablo del impacto, de las consecuencias.
Yes, I think even the communist government recently, there is a report that in an internal evaluation of international environment, someone within Communist Party said this is the biggest challenge they have faced since Tiananmen, when the government was isolated by the international community. This is another time that they are facing such crisis. But of course, I think what's happening today, a lot of it, why the world has been inflicted with such a catastrophe, it has a lot to do with 31 years ago when this government used tanks and machine guns to kill its own people. And this government could survive and embraced by the world, and through globalization has influence all over the world. For example, the people in Chile, I think there's a report about this, this Taiwanese restaurant owner simply for just speaking out for Hong Kong, and his restaurant was sabotaged. And I was under death threat because I posted it on Twitter, and that became known because of my Twitter. So they were posting a death threat on me because of that. So such is a global influence of this, that government that could kill its own people while the world is watching. It is an existential threat to the whole world, to the universal values we believe. And there's another connection to this Dr. Li Wenliang. There was a doctor in 17 years ago when the first SARS breakout happened. There's a Dr. Jiang Yanyu. And because he wrote to foreign news agency at that time, very early during the pandemic, that the world knew the extent of the pandemic. And that was one important reason why the first SARS breakout, the damage was limited, because we have this brave doctor who spoke up and who was able to tell the truth directly to the world. And this time, Dr. Li Wenliang, his message was muffled very early on. The world didn't know. Only Taiwan paid attention to it. But this Dr. Jiang Yanyu, he was also the only doctor who wrote about his experience during the Tiananmen massacre. And it's this same doctor who wanted the truth for Tiananmen, and also he spoke out that the fact that he spoke out helped save the world from this potentially huge disaster at that time. And now he is in prison, he's under house arrest 17 years later, simply because he's still calling for justice on the Tiananmen massacre. So that's, because Dr. Jiang Yanyu is silenced today. That's why this tragedy to this Dr. Li Wenliang would happen, because there's no freedom of speech, because Tiananmen is still such a forbidden topic.
Y finalmente una última pregunta, señor Zhou. Usted está involucrado en una iniciativa muy interesante en los Estados Unidos y con otras organizaciones y personas. Está creando un museo de Tiananmen. ¿Cómo va ese proyecto?
It's going well. We have built some new structures there, and in June we will unveil a group of sculptures dedicated to Hong Kong democracy movement. But I think we probably will post something online. I don't know if I can go there. I'll try. But the project is well underway. We are still looking for support, and it's getting more attention from the local community here in the United States. And so when people think about China, think about freedom in China, this is a physical symbol right there. It's called Liberty Sculpture Park near Los Angeles, 2 hours away from Los Angeles, between Los Angeles and Las Vegas.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Zhou, for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I hope one day I can speak Spanish.
I think, well, Chinese is much more difficult.
Right. Yeah.
A todos los que nos han acompañado en este evento, muchas gracias por sintonizarnos y recuerden que pueden encontrar más testimonios en disidentes.org, un proyecto de Fundación para el Progreso. Muchas gracias además a Human Rights Foundation, and China Uncensored y el Libro por su colaboración en este evento.